religious freedom does not include child endangerment.
But we need to be careful how we define child endangerment.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
And I, too, would like to welcome you to this edition of the American Religious Town Hall meeting. We're so very glad you've joined us for today's discussion. You've heard from two of the panelists, but you've not yet met them. And for that matter, you've not met any of our panelists today. And so we'd like to begin with the gentleman to my right. We're going to ask that each one say a little bit about himself or herself and a little bit about what they do.
Shalom. I am Philip Bentley. I'm a rabbi, retired, living in Hendersonville, North Carolina.
My name is Canon John Peterson. I am an Episcopal priest, canonically resident of the Diocese of Washington.
I'm Tom Plumley. I'm a minister in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. Serve as senior minister at First Christian Church, Fort Worth, Texas.
I'm Andrea Luxton. I'm president of Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
And I'm Othel H. Lakey, a bishop in retirement of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, residing in Beaufort, Georgia.
Hi, I'm Tony Matthews, and I'm the senior pastor at North Garland Baptist Fellowship in Garland, Texas.
Well, thank you, everyone, for being here today. Looking forward to today's discussion. Whenever we talk about religious freedom, that's a good day. The other programs are great, too, but this one in particular seems to fit us quite well. So let's get started. In an article on the website Religion Dispatches entitled, "Does Religious Freedom Extend to Child Endangerment? It's Not as Simple as It Seems," that's the whole title, Rebecca Moore writes that many First Amendment religious freedom court cases are less about religion than about deeply divided American cultural traditions. On one hand, certain felonies, such as child sexual abuse, forced labor, and medical procedures that cause harm, are commonly condemned and prosecuted even when done for religious reasons. On the other hand, behaviors that also harm children physically or mentally, yet are done for religious reasons, remain protected under the First Amendment, such as corporal punishment, circumcision of male infants, and homeschooling children in households that teach racial or religious hatred. Furthermore, Moore writes that 6 states have faith-based shield statutes, that is, religious exemption statutes, which allow faith-based institutions to avoid civil and criminal liability in cases of child abuse or neglect. At the same time, some argue that we have witnessed increasing government intervention and overreach into religious institutions and practices. The book entitled Storming Zion, for example, documents 116 state raids against religious minorities over the last 50 to 60 years in 17 nations. The United States had 14 raids, while France topped the list with 57 raids. Given this tension between religious freedom and child endangerment, we are asking our panelists today to consider and discuss these questions. First, to what extent has child endangerment been culturally defined, allowing us to condemn certain behaviors while also allowing us to publicly look the other way regarding other types of harm toward children? Secondly, should legal restrictions to prevent child endangerment include practices that are non-religious in nature, for example, tackle football or youth boxing? And then the third question, has government been too aggressive or too lenient in attacking minority religious groups? That is our subject for today. And again, I welcome you here to today's program, and to our panelists, thank you for being here. Let's go back now to those who helped us to begin this program, to Othel Lakey. Bishop Lakey, glad to have you here.
It's good to be here, Matt.
Thank you.
Let's say hello to all of my fellow panelists. I look forward to the discussion. I opened this up by saying that religious freedom should not include child endangerment, because it seems to me that over the past few years, those of us in the religious community, or many in the religious community, have sort of felt that we could do almost anything we wanted to do under the guise of, quote, religious freedom. And so in many instances, children have been endangered, so to speak. And I'm not using the term abuse at this point, but endangered in terms of being kept locked up in homes. They've been denied food. They've been punished in very, not abusive, but unusual ways in the name of religion. And that this old thing that spare the rod and spoil the child has been carried to extremes. And so many in certain religious traditions or practices, I should say, feel that if it's my child is my slave, my property, and I can do whatever I want to do, and the child has no rights, and I can endanger the child as I please, and the government and no one else has anything to do with it. So from my perspective of wholesome, meaningful religion, we ought to be very careful in using our religion as a guise for endangering innocent children.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Dr. Luxton, welcome back to the program today, and thank you for being here. Now, you began by saying we should be careful about how we define child endangerment.
Yes.
Now, can you say more about that?
Yeah,
for us,
certainly.
please?
Because when I listen to Bishop Lakey, I agree with the examples he's given that those are problems. But I would actually consider those child abuse, whether it's emotional abuse or physical abuse. I would go as far as I would use that word in relation to those things. The reason I say we need to be careful how we define it is because when I look at some of the other examples that were mentioned, I'm not sure that that is really endangerment. For example, it talked about homeschooling. Homeschooling in homes where racial and religious hatred is taught. I mean, I'm an educator. That would be extremely hard to monitor or prove. And you don't have to be religious to have a frame in your home which spreads hatred or bigotry, right? So what would be the follow-on from that? That we would actually remove children from homes where they're in an environment where bigotry is being supported, you know. So I think we just need to be really careful that there's a level playing field when we think about children in a religious environment compared to children in any other environment, and make sure that we aren't discriminating against the rights of religious organizations to teach their children and support ideas that are part of that religious heritage. Male circumcision, to me, is another example. To me, that is not child endangerment, right? So I think we just need to be sure the laws don't become excuses to monitor and control society, even while in true cases of abuse, such as withholding medical treatment and other things like that, that we're very clear on those things.
All right, thank you very much. And let's hear from the other panelists now. Rabbi Bentley, welcome back to the program today.
Thank you.
What is your position on this matter of child endangerment and religion and freedom?
Well, it is something that involves cultural biases. The question that comes up in the Jewish world most often is circumcision. And as a rabbi and as a father of sons, I've been present for many circumcisions. And my take it is not actually harmful. An 8-day-old infant hasn't yet found his hands. He doesn't know if he feels discomfort where it's coming from. So it's not as traumatic as some people. It becomes a kind of projection of how an adult might feel that has nothing to do with how the infant feels. On the other hand, all 50 states allow child marriage. And my understanding is that teenage girls in some religious communities are forced to marry basically against their will because their parents say so. I consider that a problem, and that is allowed in virtually, I think, every state.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Matthews, welcome to the program again. And your take on this,
Yes,
please.
I agree with all three of the panelists in in many areas. I think that we have to be very careful how we define child endangerment, and there needs to be a distinction between regular discipline and what constitutes abuse. Of course, the examples we heard earlier of children not being fed, locked in closets because in the name of religion is absolutely outrageous. And I think everyone agrees that that is not a matter of that's right, right versus wrong. And that's pretty clear. But when you talk about, as we've just heard with circumcision, even spanking, I think to interpret, one must interpret the Proverbs correctly. Spare the rod, spoil the child. And also in Proverbs 19, verse 18, it says, discipline your son while there is hope and do not desire his death. I think there's a love element in the discipline, and parents have to understand that when they discipline, they have to connect when they correct. And so, we just have to be careful how we define, and then we certainly don't want government overreaching into our homes, because in my community, for many people in my community, if you don't discipline kids at home, a lot of times they'll be met with authorities on the streets because they've been just raised in an out of control manner, and we don't want that either. So it has to be some type of discipline.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go over to Reverend Plumley. Welcome back to the program today. Your position on the matter, please.
Thank you. Here we're talking about two distinct obligations of the state, whatever government we're talking about. It has responsibility to protect children. It has responsibility for the welfare of children. And in this country, has responsibility for protection of free exercise of religion. The issue is when those two come in conflict. And I think when we just throw out statistics, sometimes we try to make cases that really aren't there. We talked about it in your statement as you began our conversation this morning. You talked about 116 raids that the government has, some government has conducted across 17 different countries across 50 or 60 years. Frankly, that's not a whole lot, because I would imagine that there have been a lot more instances in which that kind of intervention by the state was just barely averted because somebody was good enough to go in and solve the problem with some conversation. But I think that one of the things that most governments find difficult about protecting free exercise of religion is in the area of possible child endangerment or child abuse, comes when the children are hidden away from the larger society, whether that's in a single family situation or whether that's in a community situation. I know in the state I live in the state of Texas, I can think of just in the past 20 years, two very, very well-known instances in which the state went into situations that were actually cultic, specifically one of their specific aims being to take children out of those situations, or to at least see what was going on with those children. So when the free exercise of one's religion removes one's children from public view, the public rightly takes note of that and begins to raise questions about that.
All right, thank you. And then Canon Peterson, welcome to the program again. What is your take on this?
Yes, I think in the context of our conversation today, endangerment, I think that when you use religious freedom as a cover, it damages religious freedom. And I think it damages religious freedom who are using and arguing religious freedom on really ethical and moral grounds. I mean, this program really comes out of a case that started in 2016 in Idaho, and it's continuing in the courts in Idaho. And the main person in this sect called Followers of Christ, Dan Sevi, they have had 5 children, but 3 of them have died because he refuses to let his children have any medical care. And in this case, he actually says, we believe that a pharmaceutical and medicine in the product is a product from Satan. And consequently, 3 of his kids have died. Now, I think that religious freedom is an extremely valuable, sacred right in this country. But when it's misused in this way, I think that it puts religious freedom in severe jeopardy for those who are using religious freedom rightly.
All right. The question that comes to mind, and maybe some of the viewers are wondering it as well, is what is the line? What is the breaking point that goes from abuse to corporal punishment? What is corporal punishment and abuse? Where's the line drawn there? When does corporal punishment become abuse?
3 dead children.
Well, yes. All right, then Othel.
Well, I'm not sure I can quite answer that one, but one of the problems we in the religious community face is we don't police each other. That is, all of our conversation, including mine here on this panel, has been the government stepping in to do this, that, and the other. There ought to be a point at which we in the religious community say, look, y'all, this in the name of God is not good religion. You have a right to believe what you believe, but there was a time when we were critical of each other's religions. And though that had some dire consequences, as evidenced by differences around this table theologically, the point is that these were correctives to some extent on each other. We judged each other's religions. So where are we in the religious community as over against the government saying this is not a follower of Jesus Christ? That when you put these children in you can't do that. Or, to use my normal example, if you decide you're going to set up a school for your children to keep them going to school with other children, that's not, of course, child endangerment necessarily. But the fact is, we have to be careful of using, quote, religion as our guise to carry out some of our ulterior motives.
Yeah.
Yes, Tony.
Yeah,
Yes.
These are great comments, and I think it has to definitely be a distinction, and we need to call folks out, as was mentioned. What is the difference between religious freedom and a religion that is flawed? We are looking at a flawed religion here, and the religious community needs to call it out. Kids dying, of course, that is a flawed religion. Someone needs to educate these people on how far is too far.
So is corporal punishment, such as spanking, included in flawed religion?
Now,
going back to the quotation of, spare the rod, spoil the child, as we heard a moment ago, that is a biblical quotation. Where's the line on that?
Well, my parents would have been in big trouble because I tell you what, they didn't spare the rod. I think I turned out okay. I think abuse, let me just say this. When we were growing up, we were spanked. Our parents reached out and touched somebody's hand to make this world a better place. And they were not abusers. And I think nowadays, government and agencies have just gotten themselves too involved in the homes. And it's hard when we have cases, as Ken and John mentioned, there just has to be a distinction made. And
But you do agree there's a time when someone crosses the line and the government needs to step in.
It crosses, yeah.
When a crime is committed.
When a
and
crime
there
is
again, the
committed, that's when
definitions.
we need to step in. But spanking,
I would
and then
not see that as corporal punishment.
All right, John, we have 30 seconds left. You want to say you don't see that as corporal
I
punishment.
don't see spanking as corporal punishment.
How do you see it? Some do. Some say it's timeout only, and others just talk to them and reason with them. There are a lot of different angles on this, right?
I mean, I
Be not
personally do
interesting.
not
I think it
think
depends on how. I really believe it goes back to how people were raised. I mean, spanking it was just you expected to be spanked,
I
but
think
not
we're going to
abused.
have to end on that note, by the way, because we're out of time for this segment. But we are going to have our summary statements in just what a place to end on that. Anyway, there's an important announcement I'd like for you to listen to. We'll be back in just a few moments.
Thank you, Pastor Lutz. We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you, Pastor Lutz, and today's closing statements.
Thank you. And I do look forward to hearing from you. If you just send us a card or a letter, or maybe go online, you can send an email from that place. And then while you're there at the website, you can look at some of the past programs of the Town Hall. Interesting subjects I'm sure that you'd be interested in looking at. We're going to go to our summary statements now. For that, we begin with Rabbi Bentley. You're first.
At one of my first teaching jobs was with the 9th grade, and we were studying Psalms. And we got to spare your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And the children in the class said they knew what that meant and that they accepted it. The question is, when does it go too far?
All right, thank you very much. And then Reverend Plumley, your summation, please.
Yeah, I think it is important to recognize that regardless of our religious tradition, some physical touching of our children for the sake of punishment steps across the line and becomes abusive. And we need to remain in conversation. That's why I was talking a while ago about the necessity of raising red flags when people are cordoning their children off and not allowing them to be part of the larger society. Sometimes that means they're hiding something.
All right, thank you very much. And now, Bishop.
Thank you very much. One area we did not touch on, which I think we wish we could have, that is the language abuse of our children by parents. The degrading, the dehumanizing of our children is an area that we don't talk about, and I think the church should. How do we talk to our children in terms of making them feel less than human, less than personal, and therefore abuse them or endanger their whole personality by the way we talk to our children? Religious freedom ought to mean religious responsibility.
Thank you, Bishop Lakey. And now Dr. Matthews.
Yes, I'm praying that people in the religious flawed groups will understand that medicine and doctors are God's gifts to society, and the Lord can work through doctors and medication to bring healing to children. So we have to pray and seek doctors, and there's nothing biblically wrong with that. And we just hope that that would be taken into consideration.
All right, thank you very much. Then Dr. Luxton, your summation, please.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the whole question is, when is the overreach? Clearly, there are times when the state needs to intervene in cases of child, and I'm going to use the word abuse again, and I think that is, to me, is the best way of using it. When something moves into the area of what we would define as abuse, even if it's just verbal, I think we should be responding and dealing with that as communities, whether communities of faith and or the state. But I think there is a time of overreach when it almost becomes an excuse to step into a religious organization to bring change that has nothing really to do with endangerment. Then I think it goes too far. It goes too far.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Canon Peterson, your summation, please.
Yes, I would like to continue what Andrea has been speaking about, overreach. Corporal, yes, I understand that when you spank a child, that's corporal punishment. But I think that, once again, in moderation, that might be acceptable or might not be acceptable. It is acceptable in relationship to disciplining. Now, I personally have never done that in my life to our two daughters, but I can understand. And I think that so oftentimes we have a tendency to be able to mix apples and oranges in these types of discussions that we're having. And so I think that we really have to be very sensitive to exactly what the issues of abuse are. And I think abuse here is a critical thing. And certainly what Othel is suggesting, the abuse, verbal abuse, could be even far more serious than physical abuse. And so I think that we have to be very sensitive to all these things. But I'll go back to my original point. I think that in a discussion like we're having today, I think that religious freedom also has to be seen as such an important vehicle that we have and right that we have. But when is there overreach in that as well?
All right, thank you very much. And thank you to all of the panelists today for this great discussion. We hope that this has stimulated some thought at home, maybe even some conversations around the kitchen table, or perhaps with your priest, your rabbi, whoever your religious leader is. And again, I want to thank the panelists. I know you're very busy in your regular, normal jobs that you do back home. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. Look forward to meeting you again. But until then, stay safe, be strong. We'll come back and do this again sometime very, very soon. But for now, we want to say that the charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their religious beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America, we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And so now, friends, until next week at the same time and over this very same channel, or however it is that you tune into the American Religious Town Hall meeting, for now, the Town Hall stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.